This is Nick with logosbynick.com, and in today's tutorial I'll be demonstrating how you can create this DJ music sort of logo using Inkscape. And this logo has a vinyl record with headphones around it and a little bit of flames coming out from the top. So at any point in this tutorial you could look down at the bottom left hand side of my screen to see which mouse clicks and keystrokes I'm using. So I'll minimize this and we'll get started here in Inkscape. By the way, if you'd like to know how you can make Inkscape appear darkened with these custom icons, a link to that information will be in the description of the video. So the first thing we want to do in Inkscape is make sure that we have the view set to custom. We're going to zoom in at 1:1, and then I'm going to open up the Align and Distribute menu with this button, and we'll want Last Selected chosen from that drop down, and then we'll go to the Edit Objects, Colors, Gradients, and Stroke menu by clicking that button. So what we're going to create first is this little record here in the center. So we're going to grab the Circles and Ellipses tool, hold Control and Shift on the keyboard and click and drag to create a perfectly round circle like that. And I'll go back to the Select tool. I'm going to come over here to the opacity and bring this down in half. And then I'll right click that and go to Duplicate. And I'll turn that copy red. And I'll hold Control and Shift on the keyboard and click and drag to scale this in about that much. That'll be the label. I guess you can call it the label on the inside of the record. And I'll right click that, go to Duplicate, and I'll turn that one black. Hold Control and Shift and scale that down about that much, and that could be the center of the vinyl record. So what we want to do now is click on this red circle and hold Shift and click on the black circle behind it, and we'll duplicate those by going to we'll right click that and go to Duplicate. We'll go to Path, Difference, then we'll turn that green, and we'll go to Path, Inset to make that a little smaller on the inside. We're going to want to do that a few more times, but instead of clicking Path Inset over and over again, we could use the keyboard shortcut, which is Control 9. So we hit Control 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that's pretty good like that. And what we can do now is grab the Squares and Rectangles tool, hold Control and Shift and click and drag to create a perfect square like that. And I'm going to turn that blue. I'll go back to the Select tool. I'll click on this a second time to get the rotation handles, and I'll hold Control on the keyboard and grab one of these corner handles and just rotate this around until the corners are going vertically and horizontally like that. And I'll click on this again to get back to the scaling handles, and I'm just going to take this right arrow and pull that in about that much so it creates like this diamond shape. And I'm going to put this right about here like that. And I'll right click that and go to Duplicate, and I'll hold Control and just click and drag this down to here to the similar position but on the other side, and then hold Shift and click on the other blue object and go to Path, Union, and then you can hold Shift and click on the green ring and make sure that everything is centered on the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. And once we've done that, we can go to Path, Intersection. We can click on this a second time to get the rotation handles, and I'm just going to hold Control and just take this corner arrow and rotate this around about that far, like that. And that's the sort of like the reflective light part of the record there. So the next thing we're going to create are the headphones. So I'll click off of that to deselect everything. I'm going to take this black circle, and I'll right click that and go to Duplicate. And I'm going to give that a red outline by holding Shift and clicking on the color red. Then I'll turn off the fill by clicking the X over here. And I'm just going to hold Control and Shift and scale this up until that red outline is going outside of the black circle, maybe about that far. And your outline may be thicker or smaller depending on whatever settings you were previously using. So what we're going to do is come over to the Stroke Style tab, and I have mine set to 20 because that's what I was previously using. And this is going to make the part right here like the strap of the headphone that goes over the head. I think maybe it's a little thicker than that, so maybe I'll try 25. I'll hold Control and Shift and scale that up a little more. And I'd say that's pretty good right there. Once you have it set to a good size, we could finalize it by going to Path, Stroke to Path. And now we have to create the actual the ear parts of the headphones. So we'll grab the Circles and Ellipses tool and just click and drag to create an ellipse like that. I'm going to make that blue, and I'm going to get rid of the outline by holding Shift and clicking on the X. We'll go back to the Select tool. I'll hold Shift and click on the red ring and make sure it's centered on the horizontal axis, and then click off of it to deselect everything. So what I want to do now is take this blue ellipse and right click that and go to duplicate and hold control and take this arrow to the right here and scale that down, and just hold control and move this off to the left a little bit, and that's pretty good. We could hold shift and click on the other blue object and go to path union, and that's one side of the headphones. We have to create another copy for the other side. So we'll right click that and go to duplicate. We'll flip that horizontally and hold control on the keyboard and click and drag this over to here to about the same position. And then we could hold shift and click on the other blue object and unify them both together by going to path union, and then hold shift and click on the red ring and just make sure it's centered on the vertical axis. And with those two still selected, we can right click them and go to duplicate and go to path intersection, and we'll turn that green. And what I want to do now with that green object is I want to right click that and go to duplicate, hold shift, click on the blue headphone muffs, ear muffs, and go to path difference, and then path break apart. And then you can hold shift and click on this blue object to the left to deselect it, and while still holding shift, click on this blue object to the far right to deselect that, just so you have this stuff over here selected. And with that selected, you can just press delete on the keyboard to get rid of it. So now we're going to take the green objects here, right click that, go to duplicate, hold shift, click on the red ring, and go to path difference, and then path break apart. And then you can hold shift in the keyboard and click on the top of this red ring right here to deselect it. And still holding shift, we're going to click on the bottom of this red ring right here to deselect that. And we're going to have all these little fragments selected left over, and we can just press delete on the keyboard to get rid of them. And you know what, as a matter of fact, we could delete this as well. So we'll just take that, press delete on the keyboard. And what we could do now is click on the red object and hold shift, click on the green object, still holding shift, click on both of those two blue objects, and unify them all together by going to path union. And what I'll do now is let's make this black, and I'll take this green, these two green objects right here, and hold shift and click on the black circle behind it and go to path difference. And we can click on this red circle, hold shift, click on the black circle behind it, go to path difference, and we have that part of the logo set. We just have to create the flame up top here, which is it's a little tricky. It's going to require a little bit of freehand work, but it shouldn't be too hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the squares and rectangles tool, and I'll hold control and shift and click and drag to create a perfect square like that. And I'm going to make this red, and I'm going to convert that to a path by going to path, object to path. And then I'll grab the select tool, click on this again to get the rotation handles, and hold control and take one of these corner arrows and rotate it around so that the corners are going horizontally and vertically. And what I'll do now is I'll hold shift and click on the circle to make sure it's centered on the vertical axis. Click off of it to deselect everything, and then just take just this this red square right here and just hold control and just slide this down to about here. And I'm going to hold control and shift and scale this up until it's maybe that big. I want the corners of the red object going like just above where like the headphones are, the ear part of the headphones are, but inside of the black area like that. And once we have it set like that, by the way, if you'd like to zoom in, you just press plus and minus on the keyboard. And once we've done that, I'm going to click on the red square. I'm going to go to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool. I'm going to hold control and grab this top node and bring it all the way up until these red lines are going outside of the black top of the headphone right there like that. And that's pretty good. And what I'll do now is I'll click and drag over all three of those nodes up here of this red object. And I'm going to come over here to the button that says Insert New Nodes into Selected Segments. I'll click that once, and then I'll click it one more time, and we should have these 6 new nodes in here. And what we could do with those is, let's click on just that one node, and then click and drag it up to about here. This is kind of gonna, it's gonna be kind of like a block of clay where we kind of just like mold it into what we want it to look like, which is, we're gonna create these flames here. So I'll move this node up to here. I'll leave that node where it is. I'll take this one and move this up to here. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'll move this one up to here. Don't worry about these being symmetrical on each side. They don't have to be. In fact, it's a flame. It's supposed to be like whimsical and uneven, so that'll be all right. And we'll take this node and put this like up here, something like that. And what we can do now is I'm going to take this line, this edge right here. I'm just going to click and drag and pull that out like that. Then I'll click on this node down here, and I'm going to take this handle and bring that in like that to give this a nice curl. And I'll take this handle and pull that out a little bit. And you can see where I'm going with this. I'm giving it a nice curve. And again, we'll take this edge right here, pull that line down. Take this handle, pull that in a little bit like that. And I'll click on this node to get this handle, and I'll take this handle and bring this out here like that. And then I'll take this edge over here and pull that out as well. I'll take this edge, pull that down. Take this handle, bring that in a little bit. Take this handle up here, bring that in a little bit. We'll do the same thing over here. I'll pull this edge down. Just alter the handles as necessary. Pull that edge in, take this handle, pull that out. Click on this node, get this handle, pull that like that. Maybe I'll bring that in a little more. This one as well, I'll bring this. This requires a little bit of time. You got to really play around with this to really get it looking nice and fluid. So I'm just going to try to make it look somewhat acceptable for the tutorial here. I'll take this handle, put this out here. Take this handle, bring that in. Maybe pull that down a little more. Maybe bring that in more. You know what, maybe I'll just take this whole thing and bring that a little closer, bring that in a little more. Put that handle there, up here, like that. And the problem we have now is that this part here, where this node is, it's not very fluid with the rest of it. It's supposed to be like one fluid shape. And what we could do to fix that is we could just hold Control and click on the node, and it'll make it auto smooth. Well, not auto smooth, it'll make it smooth like that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to hold Control and click on that node. And I'm just going to take this node and pull that up a little more. I'm just going to double click on this edge right here to put a new node in there. You double click and it puts a new node, and you can take that node, that individual node, and pull that down like that. I'll do the same thing over here. Double click to put a new node in there. Pull this one down like that. And it's starting to come together. And you know what, maybe I'll adjust this a little bit. Pull that out. Pull this in more. And like I said, you could just play around with this and just get it looking right. I mean, if I were to sit here and make this thing look perfect, it would be an hour-long video. But I'll just leave it at this as it is right now. I think that's good enough. So once we're done, I'll go back to the Select tool, and I'm going to click on the headphones. And I'll right-click that and go to Duplicate. And I'll turn them green. And I'll go to Path Outset. We're going to do that a few more times, but instead of doing that over and over, I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcut, which is Control-0. So I'll hold Control, hit 0 once, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. About 6 times, that's pretty good. Once we have it about that big, hold Shift, click on the red flame right there, and go to Path Difference, and then Path Break Apart. And then we can hold Shift and click on this red flame up top to deselect it, just so we have this unnecessary shape down here still selected, and then we can just press delete on the keyboard to get rid of that. And now we can click and drag over the whole thing and just go to Path Union. Bring the opacity all the way up. You can hold Control and Shift and scale it in if you want. And that's pretty much it. That's how we've created our logo using Inkscape. So if you have any questions, let me know. And as always, thank you for watching.